Thank you for being part of this panel. I'm incredibly excited because we now, more often than not, are asking ourselves what you're watching. Uh, Kind of bad being in a literature festival asking people what you're watching and not what you're reading. But the question has always remained that the ability for the screen to spark imagination from readers, non-readers, presenting ideas visually, and then building a world of itself. I think there are more people who watched Harry Potter than there are people who've read Harry Potter. And the same applies for our rich tradition of films that have entertained people across languages, across age, across diversity. And a lot of it comes from that power of storytelling. Do we do a book that's going to take a few days to read? Or do I see an 8-episode series or watch a 2-hour film? And for publishers and authors, it's always been fascinating. How do I write that powerful big film? Or a powerful big show? Or, in the case of Anand, many 100,000 copies selling books. So this morning we'll try and find if there's a secret sauce at all, or the sauce is just imagination, and how if we just live with the fact that imagination will continue to surprise us as we bump it. I'm going to start with you, Sahira. How does a person like you think when you're saying, this is what's going to work on screen?
Honestly, I don't think there's, I know that everybody here would love to hear that there's a formula and you just have to write 1, 2, 3 and then that's it. You're going to get a series made. But it honestly doesn't work like that. I think that the most important part of telling any story for a web series space, for platforms today, is the fact that their authenticity, I think, is what sets them apart from everything else. So the authenticity of characters, the authenticity of the world that they build, that's actually where it's different from either linear television or the Bollywood films that we watch. And that's why the OTT service, I think, has become so big today. So there's, a book, not all books can be made to screen. Some things are left at being a novel. There is no way to actually take that content or that writing and put it in a visual medium. But there are times, of course, as we've noticed many times before, where books can be converted into screenplay. The craft of writing a novel or writing a book, or the craft of putting together a screenplay or writing a series, is completely different. The format of writing is entirely different. Even when you're taking a book and adapting it into a series or a film, you actually bring on specialized writers who understand the meaning of taking what's in that novel and creating it to make it engaging for a screen versus, just the word. So it's not really, there's no one kind of book or those 5 steps to which you can write a book that's going to get converted to screen. I think it really depends upon the story and whether that content can actually translate onto the screen. And I don't think that people who are writing novels should write with that in mind. In my opinion, if you're writing a novel and that's what you're setting out to do, you're writing a book and that is what you're doing, you're writing the word, that's what you should do. And if it translates into something on screen, that's great. But if not, then it's where it's supposed to be, is a book.
Incredible. Very well said. But that's something I'm going to pick up with Anand later. But Radhika, a lot of what Tulsi does is that next step. We already know we like the book. Yeah. And you make valuable connections between finding who can be the writers, who can be the screenplay writers, who can be the stars, who can be the directors, and how can it go beyond that. And I have a question following with Anand. You can pick it up from there. Is as a writer of mega visual imaginative pieces, where does control, your ability to transcend that imagination and the choice between author control? But I'm going to start with you. You like a book. What happens next? How do you marry the right spaces to make it a successful visual medium? Find the right people to do that.
Firstly, thank you for having us on the panel, and thank you for everyone who showed up on this rainy morning. I think completely agree with what Sahira said. I think the biggest pitfall for an author would be to try and write a book with the cinematic adaptation in mind. They must write the book for their intended audience, which is a passionate reader. Similarly, the person who is looking to adapt a book, I think the soul of the story must resonate with that creator. That cannot be manufactured. And we've had, I'm sure Sahira, sitting in her position, has seen countless examples of half-baked adaptations. And you can tell when it's been rushed. You can tell when a creator has just been slapped onto a book and it's gone onto screen. You can also tell clearly when there is a creator who has genuinely found a connection with the book, with the soul of that story, and has their own creative take. They're not just trying to take the words that the author has already put down and find a shortcut to get it on screen. They're genuinely trying to incorporate their voice into it and create something that has its own magic for an audience that may overlap with the book's readership or maybe a completely new audience. And I think at Tulsi, what we enjoy doing is that process of matchmaking. It's almost like putting a couple together in an arranged marriage. You're putting a book and a creator who is going to be hopefully deeply, madly in love with the material and then make it his or her own.
Thank you. Anand. Anand is for me, wow, Neelakantan. Suddenly on a Saturday morning, he'll send me a link where he's acting. And then there's I'm creating this series. And then he finds the time to write books. But Anand, you've transitioned to that imaginative screenwriting. What's the experience? What's working? How do you make it happen?
For me, it all happened because of an accident. The accident of not knowing English enough when I started writing in English. So for me, the storytelling always had to be visual. So even my novels are very visual. That might be the reason, because perhaps I was picked up by almost who is who of the Indian directors. I think I would have bound stories or working on with almost all the major directors in the country in all languages. Most of them have read my books and found that they are very visual in writing. Because my language, I don't have the flowery language of my country cousins like Arundhati Roy or Shashi Tharoor. So I compensate that with mega visuals and huge imagination when I'm doing it. So most of my books are either in the process of adaptation or they are already there. Other than that, I have written a lot of screenplays which have nothing to do with my book or completely opposite to what I have written in my book. That also I have done. So main thing to understand, at least from my experience, what I do is I don't get too egoistic about the book. Because book is one thing, screenplay is a different art.
Very valuable, yes.
So what happens when you try to control the screenplay process? It won't work. It won't work at all because screenplay is just the foundation of the entire film or show, or each is different form of writing. OTT is a different writing, GZ is a different writing, audio shows which I have written, that's a different form of writing, and films are a different form of writing. And according to language also it changes. Director has control for films, and the showrunner has a control for OTT. He is a boss, and the channel has the entire control for the GEC shows which I write. Channel wants something, we have to give it, and it depends on how the advertiser wants it, when it's going to be the break, and which actor is going. That's the toughest form of writing. The GEC shows.
But it is collaborative.
All writing for screen is collaborative.
Perfect. It's not like they've taken away and say, thank you, Anand.
So many authors who are great writers, they get connected with the producers and directors, and in 6 months they are calling each other's names and abusing their parents and coming back. So, so this happens because of that, because many of the authors don't understand that they are not the boss anymore once you are given the... So I keep up the literary festival personality of Anand Neelakantan is totally different from the personality when I enter the studios. So it will be like this.
And also to bring back dead people alive because people want them back.
No, that is what GEC. OTT is a different thing. So that's why it's like a role play. Yeah. It's like an actor playing the part.
OTT, I think OTT storytelling, one of the things that I think a lot of us, even as viewers or fans of cinema, have realized is that there is a certain integrity that OTT demands of that story. You can't get away with bullshit. And it shows almost instantly when you do that. And great discipline on that 30-second scene and that 50-minute episode kind of thing.
OTT is the closest to novel. Yeah. Of all formats.
Yeah, because you want it to work. Anish, you've done many things in a way, but I think as a very successful agent, you've also done two stuff. One is to know which book to pitch to whom, understanding that landscape, and you've transitioned that very well. Plus also sometimes taking your writers directly to the other medium of storytelling. Uh, did you learn to do it? Where did that confidence come from? What works in that place?
Uh, Thanks, but everything's learned on the job, learned from the marketplace. So I see that, I think we are in phase 2 of our sort of OTT screen or this adaptation
Briefly
evolution.
tell me what phase 1
So
was.
phase 1 was totally random, where 2017, the streaming platforms are in India, they want to have bound scripts, and which was, I think at the time, a fairly new concept, and the idea of a writer's room, which was new. So I would send a catalog to a producer, and let's say the catalog had 200 books. I'd get a response in 2 days saying, I'd like to option book 1, 7, 22. So it's clear nobody's reading these books, right? So these were optioned because the producer was taking a punt that the OTT space will expand. And they'll say, I want 1 crime, 1 rom-com, 1 chick lit, 1 lad lit, 1 blah, 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 right? But now in phase 2, so now when I pitch, and this is just purely based on market feedback, what I do is I'm pitching to specific people, but I take specific things to them. So I won't just say that here's a book. So here's a book, here's a writer, he does not want to participate. Here are potential screenwriters who are interested in this. Here's some money that is potentially, that could get attached to this, which I think in the business is called a packaging service. Like you put all of it together. So I see it as a jigsaw puzzle now. And how many pieces of this jigsaw can I offer? Sure. Yeah.
No, I think it's a plug, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Best film, 12th Fail, is a HarperCollins book. But the book was just as powerful. So it felt like what the team did was just take it to the next level, understanding the Indian ethos of emotion, and like, boom. Best critic, Joram, the best critics film, was actually a combination of 2 short stories from an English book. Like 3 became a short story, which became a film, because somebody just had that one kernel of an idea and blew it out of, our world, as it were. In publishing, we have editorial meetings where we talk about what we want to publish next. What happens in Amazon? Is it called an editorial meeting? Is it, I know what you did last summer, so I'm going to give you this next summer? How do you choose which direction to go? How does a platform like yours engage with audience feedback, understanding what they want to see?
So the content strategy pivots every year, I guess, maybe year and a half. There's no fixed point at which the content strategy keeps changing, but the content strategy changes as per not just what is working in the market at this time, or what are the things that people are enjoying watching as per a genre, for example, or like if it's thriller or maybe it's romantic comedies. That's something you assess, but also you start to assess, because you can, being on a platform, the good part is you're able to understand the audience, how much they're watching, when they're stopping, who's watching, what is the age group, etc. So you see the audience that you already have, so you have certain properties that they're coming in to see already. And those will continue. They go into 2nd seasons and 3rd seasons, etc. But then you have to think about the audience that you don't have. Like, who haven't you engaged on your service yet? And then if it's, let's say you're going after the 18 to 24-year-old as an example, then you start thinking about, or like researching, what is the 18 to 24-year-old watching? And basis that, you put out like a mandate where you speak to all your creators, showrunners, writers, Tulsi, etc., and tell them that, what we're really looking for is this target audience, this is the cohort we're going after, we're really looking for stories in that space. And you start, expanding as per that. But also times are changing so quickly, attention spans are so short, people's likes and dislikes are so fast moving that you're constantly assessing the market and constantly studying what is it that people are watching, what do they like.
Is it really realistically possible to give audiences what you think they want? Because it takes time to make these shows, isn't
Yeah, it does. So that's the other part that's very, very difficult, is that by the time you've written it and gotten it out, it's like a year and a half or 2 years. So what you were thinking of, at that point, you were strategizing or thinking that this is something that might work, etc. But whether it'll work in 2 years or not, you don't really know. But you take that, see, the thing is, a large part of also deciding what's going to go on the service, A, lies with authenticity, which I was coming back to, which is what you were saying earlier, the integrity, right? The story can't just be anything. People come to the platforms to watch these shows or these films because they are different from what they're watching on linear television or in Bollywood. And it's that authenticity and integrity of every scene, every line, every character, each part of that world that's so real. So that's one part of doing it, no matter what cohort you're going for, what genre you're looking at, that's definitely on point. And the other part is that, the creative gut or the creative instinct or whatever as they call it, where you've been pitched an idea or somebody's come up with just a thought. It could be a one-page concept note and you're like, this is absolutely wonderful. And it doesn't matter because it's not necessarily only trending now. It's something that it doesn't matter if it comes out 2 years from now or 3 years from now. It's such an authentically wonderful story with such palatable and relatable characters that it doesn't matter that it'll take me 2 years to get there, but there'll still be something that they want to see. Yeah.
So a lot of work from Tulsi's point. So somebody says, platform says, I'd like this. Yes, I'd like a 16-year-old serial killer who only kills 80-year-old people. Sorry. How do you do that matchmaking?
So firstly, it's helpful when executives are, collaborative and coming to the table with the true intent to create something magical together, along with either talent themselves or with people like us who are looking to curate talent. So a short anecdote or an example that comes to mind is Patal Lok, a series that we're all very proud of. And it was a series that Tulsi was able to package because Aparna Purohit gave us a fairly clear idea of the kind of space she was looking for. It may not be as precise as 16-year-old serial killer targeting 80-year-olds,
So
but
when the space was identified, the book already existed.
The book already-
When did that leap happen? Did you know that book beforehand? Did you know you're going to go to it? Did it kind of happen organically?
So the book already existed. When discussions were happening about what Tulsi and Amazon can put together, and when we got a clear sense of the brief and the broad spaces they were looking at, we started to scout for original ideas from within our roster, for books, for other sources of IP that could be a fit. We came across a book that particularly caught our attention, and we took it to Sudeep Sharma, who's the writer of NH10, Urta Punjab, just phenomenal writer that we knew had the discipline and the writing chops to translate a vision onto a larger, format as a series. And he really took to the material. Like I said, nothing magical can be created until a creator really finds something worth investing a few years of their life into in the first place. He thankfully found that in this source material, but then truly made it his own, spent about 2 years writing and developing it. Tulsi helped identify all of the other writers in the room. We helped identify the production company that came on board. To Anish's point earlier, just how many pieces of the puzzle can you put together so that you're able to at least put thought into what are the right complementary pieces that can come together. Beyond that, of course, everything is a subjective creative experience. There can be certain combinations that work, certain combinations that don't, but at least there's intent and thought that goes into it. And then, with due time, with due support from Aparna and the team to Sudeep to take the time that they need to develop, Patal Lok turned out to be the phenomenal series that it is. I think
it's one of those instances where the series and the book individually are just as powerful.
Correct.
While being different, and yet that it is the same in a way.
Correct.
It's a very unique example in the last 10 years of that transition, I think.
Absolutely.
Anand, how do you tell writers how to think cinematically? Because you said you made two very valuable points. One, to be devoid of ego and be married to your written 80,000 words. And then two, you said to understand what the director wants, what the platform wants, and to be able to train yourself to write in that matter. Cinematically or not, but to just come up with that great idea. And Bahubali, we saw the books after the mega success the films were, and your books are just as great despite Bahubali having set a how does one train themselves to think and write cinematically?
One thing, we are all living in a visual world. Last 100 years, what has happened, the book industry has not perhaps kept up with it on only one thing, Not industry as such. I'm talking about people give. There is a genre called literary fiction. What do they check it out? Basically, the greatness of language. Basically, most of them, why they cannot be converted? She made a valid point that many of them cannot be converted because they don't have a story. They have beautiful language, they have beautiful imagery, sometimes very deep thought, but there is no story in that. So that's why you're not able to convert it to the screen. To convert anything to the screen as a film or other things, it has to have a story. It should have emotions. Many of them are just play of words, which a lot of them win awards, a lot of big awards, but that's a separate genre. They cannot, many of them, those people who work on the films and other things, you are not dependent on the words. You have to depend on the images because words are not going to get translated except perhaps a few dialogues. Majority of it, it's not going to get translated to the audience. So the story has to be there. So thinking visually, foundation is to first think about the story. So one example why I give, see, most of my books have gone to 18, 19 languages across the world. Thai, Indonesian, all these languages. There are beautiful books written, but when they get translated, lost in translation happens because most of the time it has only great language. So if you don't have the translator doesn't have that kind of skill to translate it, it gets lost in translation. But if story is important, visuals are important when you are doing it, whichever language you translate to it, it becomes like, the greatest example I take is the original Ramayana itself.
Yes.
There's a great story, so many languages, whichever format you put it, it works. Mahabharata, whichever language you put it, it works.
The most incredible thing of Ramayana is we all know what happened.
Still it works.
They went away, they came back. And yet we can't stop tiring watching it in multiple interpretations.
Most of the stories are either somebody coming or somebody going.
You've just given us the dialogue for the first half of this JB. Okay, I'm going to flip a bit. Movie makers and people who work in cinemas are often accused of not being book readers. Is that true?
No.
The books that we want you to buy for cinema, but do people in Bombay generally read books in this space? I know it's a tough question, but
I don't think that you can say one way or the other.
Sure.
There's those creators that do read books and showrunners and writers and directors that do. Then there's the others that don't.
I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. If we look at the last 25 years of Oscars, the biggest films have been books. Yes? And Indian literature is, a couple of hundred centuries old. It's diverse in its languages and very rich in its storytelling, in its visuality, culture, clothing, food, age, all kinds of diversity. So why hasn't there not been a tradition of saying, if I'm going to make some shows for next year, let's look at what people are reading and buying, and why isn't there a default tendency to look for a book first?
I think that's what's happening now. I think the content landscape in India is now changing because if you think about if you think about like linear television and the shows that came out on it that were very successful, they're all soap operas in the very definition, 1,000 episodes, 2,000 episodes, all related to like family drama. I don't think there was that much room really to take a book, even if it was something that was being read to be adapted. I mean, some of them, of course, were, but not as many. I think with the shift of OTT platforms coming into India and then launching now about 5 or 6 years, starting, of course, with like Sacred Games on Netflix, also based on a book, the content landscape and its move in what's happening is now, I think, going to see a lot more books being adapted for screen, because the viewing habits of our audiences now allow for us to actually tell those stories that are more based on books.
Yeah, I was going to briefly touch upon the fact that the lack of a very ironclad censorship is an advantage, I think, in a certain way. Some is lost in that subtitling as well, which is a separate space. I think we lose some stuff. But Anish, in the experience of, because you're doing that bridge work a bit more, you're trying to marry a writer directly to what you've heard about what people want. How's that experience been? Is there a success anecdote you want to share? How it worked? Your own success, if I may. We tell people about Starfish?
Yeah.
So Anish has a writer, has a great book. The story he believed was going to, you should tell the story fully. But the movie Starfish is something that Anish made happen. Yeah.
Right. Oh, thanks. So, I mean, so there's like a funny anecdote. So this came in as a cold pitch to us, 2018, and it was a small story set in Goa, kind of mid-list literary fiction. I wasn't sure. In fact, so it had some slightly adult themes in the book. So I didn't really think of it as an adaptation, as a natural adaptation candidate. And this adult theme was crucial to the climax. But then one producer, he asked me to pitch him a female, so it was a female protagonist, and asked me to pitch him a female-driven narrative because a specific actress went up to him. So I pitched this to him, and so I don't think most people in Bombay, they don't read books. Okay, so so it's just so it's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. It's fine. There's a narrative culture where you kind of narrate your pitches. So I pitched this over a WhatsApp call, and then when I got to that climactic piece, I was kind of emphasizing to the producer that, you know, you got to change this. This won't work for screen, this bit. And I don't think he heard it. So it was like a mispitch. And then he kind of took the mispitch even, so it became like Chinese whispers, me pitching something to him and him pitching something else. And by the time the whole thing reached the final destination, it was a completely different story. But the fact is that if those mispitches hadn't happened, it is quite likely that the source material would never be read. Okay. So then when multiple people read it, they were like, you know what, we can do this. So then the story that was originally set in Goa, then it was shot in Malta, and one thing led to the other, and then there was a theatrical release, and now it's on Netflix. So, but
You have to say that what the mispitch.
No, I don't.
Anecdote. Anyway, good. Okay, don't worry.
There are no accidents.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I think when we want to do, we have a division called New Media in HarperCollins, and one of those things that my wonderful colleague and editor is here does is right at the beginning of when we buy a book, he's bringing that, you know, Oracle version, saying, not Oracle, the software, Oracle, he would say, this would work. This part of this would work, and I think this I can pitch or this I cannot pitch, because I'm having these conversations across with people, and they will like it or they will not like it and stuff like that.
I want to add one thing.
Please.
What has gone, as a writer I am telling, I don't know how, one problem which has happened is now it has more or less becoming a kind of formula driven. So many softwares, so many people thinking, trying to outguess the audience, what will work, what will not work. So I keep giving pictures, channels keep calling me, OTT, GEC channels keep calling me. The channel head and the executives have an idea what is going to work, and you come up with the pitch, you write the entire thing and go there. Many times it happens. By the time the research has told, people are watching something else, because people will keep watching something else, right? And then say, no, this is not going to work. We need some other story like this. This churn is happening in Mumbai a lot with all the writers. This is what writers speak about. Every 5 minutes, every fifth day, channel executives and the people are having a different idea of what will work, depending on what the market is telling. Maybe software is telling them, maybe research is telling them. But what the biggest problem, what will happen, you know, something which I'm not saying nothing of that is happening, but a lot of time what gets victimized is, like earlier people have a conviction about a film, a producer or a director has a conviction about the film. He is going it with his heart, that this is going to work, this may or may not work, but great classics were made like that. Yeah. Now it is like a recipe. 10 people are sitting together and telling that we'll put this in, and everybody is a writer in the writer's room. It's the biggest this thing we have. Everyone is a writer in the from the channel executive onwards. I'm not mincing words here because this is a version where I can tell it.
It's an important one.
Yeah. So what is happening is everyone, because I've been last 10, 12 years, like 8 EC and OTT put together 8, 9 shows, another 4 in the offing, 2 films. Films is easier to work. You have to only place the director.
So I was going to ask that question. Is that the ability of OTT to capture our imagination has become so important, and the race is now, you know, so big. What is the balance between having somebody write you a film?
Film, see, I work with Rajamouli. I have to only please Rajamouli. If he likes me, he takes it. Otherwise, he kicks me out. It's fine. I work with Rakesh Mehra, the film which is going to come.
What is it called?
Karna. It's a 2-part film. It's a 600 crore film. The both screenplays I have finished and given. I am working with him. He likes the scene or don't like. But when I am doing Srimad Ramayan for Sony TV. There are around 20 people telling what to write on each scene.
But they went and they
That is
came
how
back,
that is
like you said.
no. I wrote Taj for Z. Then also every scene goes through everybody has, what happens, no, as a writer, what is happening, which I want to tell it here. When you are writing, you are planning out the entire thing. When I am putting a word here, a dialogue here, in my mind, I am connecting it with a scene which is going to happen in the later in the 70% of this thing. But somebody would have watched a Turkish show or a show in Korean show, and the previous night, they will like it and they will say, why don't you play this scene like this? You can't say anything. Channel is telling you are a poor writer, you are living with this.
No, you're not a poor writer. You just said some numbers that I can't quote in publishing.
So what happens is, then we change it. After that, finally what the writer has conceived and what even the showrunner has conceived and what comes as the final products will be totally different. One good thing is, sometimes I go and work, GEC I work only in mythology. I want other OTTs I work in every kind of thing. Mythology, they cannot ask me, say that, no, I saw this K drama, why can't Ravan kill Ram this time? That's not going to happen. So that way, at least that much is there.
It's a good one. I was going to ask you a question, but your experience.
Sorry, I just want to come in there. I'm sorry that your experience has been so bad with the
It's not
OTT
bad.
platforms.
I love it. I get a lot of
But
money.
I will definitely say with full conviction that you must come and try and work with us because we are super collaborative. I think Radhika can speak
I can
for that.
attest to that.
And I also want to say that we're not.
I need a cut.
And also, we don't work like that. I promise. We don't go, oh, I watched the show last night, just change the scene, yeah, put this dialogue. No, that usually is not our way of working.
That's
But-
good to know. Great to know.
So we can stick with the fun a bit more. I was going to ask, what are you reading? But you already said you guys don't read anymore.
No, people in Bombay
Not
don't
you,
read anymore.
not you in particular. But I have two questions.
Sure.
Are you reading anything in the hope of saying this is going to happen? You don't have to mention the publisher, but you say I'm reading this story, that story. And what Tulsi's next big project, what can we look forward to? What are you looking forward? What can we look forward to seeing in the near future? And what are you reading?
I'm reading a couple of books actually at the moment, out of which one has been optioned. Unfortunately, I can't mention it at the moment, but it has been optioned and it's coming together beautifully.
Genre?
I would say it's a dark drama with a feminist. A feminist 16-year-old serial killer who only targets 80-year-olds.
Good.
But it is being helmed by a phenomenal female writer-director, who's built a beautiful filmography. Hope to be able to announce it soon. And we have a wonderful Indian producing partner, and we're looking at international partners and hoping to take this to international film festivals. And this actually started a couple of years ago when my talent called me and said, oh, I just came across this book completely randomly on an Amazon purchase that I did on a whim. But it's blown my mind. I bought the book immediately. I read it in a day and a half because it was a quick read. It was about 200 pages. Fell in love with it as well. We were calling each other and gushing about it. Figured out how to approach the publisher. Thankfully, the rights were available. And the writer-director was so convinced that she optioned it herself without having a producer on board, put down the money, and we helped her structure the deal.
Excellent. How often, when you say talent, you mean directors or artists and stuff like that, like for
Yes.
the people in the room?
Yes.
How often do you get that input where somebody says, I really like this, I saw it in a plane or read it in America or whatever? How often, what are the chances?
Very often, actually, and we represent over 150 writers, directors, some producers, some actors, who sometimes say, oh, I came across this book on a plane, or someone was telling me about it, or I watched a Turkish show, and it made me think of, what I would like to do. And very often the cues come from talent. In fact, there have been times where young writers we represent have brought a book to our attention. We've realized that, oh, this has potential. We've packaged it maybe with a senior talent, but found a way to have that young writer be part of the writer's room. So they also, they've initiated it and they continue to be a part of championing that adaptation.
I just want to add here that this is a platform's dream come true. It's that the book that is coming to you has actually come from the creator, showrunner, or writer. Their passion and love for that book is the reason why it's come to you at all. That is like the best part for us, because the investment of that creator, showrunner, or writer is so much and so deeply rooted in it that they will just bring it to life to screen. So that's the best, rather than the other way around, which is that, oh, there's a book, now let's try to find somebody that we think would want to have this, and it would be nice, this person matches well because it's that genre. It's the other way around, is like, it's a dream come true.
Excellent. Let's stick with it. What are you reading? What can we expect next?
I definitely can't say what you can expect next, but I can tell you that there are certain things that are based on books that will be that are in the process of
So when
being
either of you announce
adapted.
just hashtag JBM 2024, so if somebody is
Yeah.
following, they'll know that they heard it here first.
We
So
were
please
in
do
the
that.
room that day.
Yeah.
Not getting paid for it. But,
So of course I'm reading those books. I will just keep them as those
excellent.
books.
Anish, what are you doing?
So I'll just kind of touch upon which Anand also spoke about. There's a certain randomness to this, even in the final stage. So in the next 18 months, there'll be 5 shows/movies that I've sold which should show up, okay? But the randomness is this. So one of them has a fairly prominent leading man, and all of this is based on books. But even now, where half the shoot's over, we don't know, I have no clue if this is going to be a theatrical release or is it going direct to OTT. Because the producer is like, oh gee, it depends on his box office. Then, right? Will distributors then buy him?
It's almost, your last
Yeah.
success or failure
Totally.
determines your next
Yeah.
step.
So the moment that word depends comes in, then it adds randomness to it.
Done. Okay. I'm going to do a quick fire to all 4 of you, yes? Bahubali or Spywars?
Bahubali, of course.
Perfect. Animal or Barbie?
Barbie.
Will you sell to a publisher first or sell to a film people first?
All of the above.
Cool.
He will sell.
Amazon or Netflix?
Oh, ha ha ha. I don't know, I have to think about it. Definitely Prime Video.
No, but the question for you was originals or adaptations?
Both. There's no, a great story is a great story.
That's the greatest thing about the world we live in, that, 25, 30 years, more than 100 years of experience, the ability of a book or a scene or a dialogue or show to just blow our mind. Long may it live. Thank you for your time. I'm going to ask if the floor has questions so they can ask you questions directly. Please, second row here, lady in red. Louder, yeah, please.
Yeah, yeah.
Just stand up and just
Thank you. There is a lot of popcorn content right now in terms of Insta Reels and TikTok. I am addicted to them. So the attention spans are dropping. Now Indian OTT space is also very new. So whether long form content on OTT, are you going to share the space with this content, which is a lot of creative content there also, or they have 2 different separate spaces?
I don't think that we can share it because it's a totally different format. Writing for or telling stories in the long form, which is whether it's a series and how many episodes or what the story holds, is one type of writing, and it's done by specific people, constructing a screenplay, writing dialogue, telling that story. And what we currently see on whether it's Insta, TikTok, or short form content, I think that's a different type of storytelling, not really storytelling, but a different type of snackish content. I think they both have their own specific places. So I don't think that you can share it, but I could definitely see something where, you can, today you tell stories about it, in the sense that what it's doing to the generation today, what is snackish content, what is Instagram, being online in the web, what is that doing to our generation and current time? So that's something that I think you could see in long form content storytelling.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to, a lot of great insights here, and thank you for all those insights. Just wanted to know, for a young author,
Anish, you want to take that on how a young writer should
I think the first thing you should do as a young writer is figure out different lengths of pitching your story. You should be able to articulate or pitch your story as a one-liner, as a one-pager, as a 10-pager, as a 50-pager. And don't depend on, I'm going to send my book and you will read it and then you will come to this conclusion, because then you're depending on someone putting in 7-8 hours of effort and then maybe coming to the conclusion that I don't want to do it. So I think that's the one thing you should do as a young writer.
Yeah. The first thing also is to add, the idea of the elevator pitch was exactly that. Is that if you can tell me what makes it different, and you get that hook attention, and then you stretch it and have a meeting and then stretch it from there on. Sir. Yeah, coming.
This is to do with the background I come from. And just to be sympathetic to the community I come, which is media and advertising. So what happens with the channels is that they're very worried about the number of people who are going to be watching it on a given day or, over the episode, because that brings them advertising. That's how they make money. Unlike Amazon and Netflix, where they're worried about the number of subscribers this series is going to bring,
Sure.
who would watch other things also,
Sure.
right? So I just want to say that. And my question to this lady from Sahira Nair is, so there was this talk about Amazon going to go advertising driven. This is related to that. Is that going to happen?
That's confidential, but
Oh,
it'll come.
Netflix is advertising driven in the US and several other countries. So I don't think there's much of confidentiality to do with that. I thought I would take the opportunity. Because it's to do with the creative process. It's not out of context. What I'm saying is, once that happens, they're going to be worried about who is going to be watching this piece of creativity, this series. How many people? Because when you place advertising, you place it on a certain content. You don't give it to
Yeah, but the idea, I suppose, is whether it's entertaining or not.
Sorry, I was just going to come to that. So the whether there's advertising or not on any OTT platform, we still need people to watch it. It doesn't. I can have advertising or not have advertising, but I still need subscribers for my business to work. It's also a business while we're telling entertaining stories. So we
Yeah,
do need
one
some-
last question, gentleman in the third row, please. Here.
Thank you all for that insightful talk. So my question is that has the process gone reverse yet in our country? Has something that has been created for the screen resulted in an interesting book which has an audience? And I'm wondering if that's happened, and do you see it happening?
Bahubali is like that. Bahubali, the book series which I wrote, that is when the first film they were about to release, that was the time Rajamouli called me and asked me to create the entire story world which will expand so that they can make it into a series and a story world. So there are around 40 characters which are not in the film, who are the main characters in the book. So it became a 3-book, 500 pages, or almost 1,500 pages, of 1,600 pages of a huge book series. From the film, 3-4 characters from the film were taken, and a story of their past, a pseudo history was written, like historical fiction, for it.
So what I'm very curious about is whether a film or which is not a big world building type of story, which is maybe a sensitive story about, say, a couple, do you see that reverse translation taking place? I mean, has that ever happened yet so far?
I mean, I think so. I think Abhiman would make a great book as well in the hands of the right author. I think there's, and it also follows certain classic storytelling tropes. I think there's space for that, but we should speak to right publishers.
It's always
like
a tricky
yourself about.
conversation. We always watch something, we like something, we think that the storytelling format, the reading is a much more slower experience than watching. So when we choose if this is going to make that transition, even if it feels ready-made, the idea is for, like you're saying, it takes a while to publish a book, to say that is this success going to translate into a slower consumption format, a much more slower, much more self. Right. You can Amazon and chill, but you have to read your book yourself.
Netflix and chill it is, okay? Not Amazon and chill.
I didn't want to say Netflix for you, and I'm trying to plug your brand, and I mean, come on.
You're confusing our brand with chill.
No, I'm not. I just was kind to Amazon here. Okay, Netflix and chill. Don't want Amazon.
No.
Go back and
That's
cancel
not what I meant
subscriptions.
at all.
You
How
walked
the
into
you
it. Come on.
By the way,
But it works. It might work. The idea is it might work. But it is. I'll give you a strange anecdote. In this movie, Kala, Rajinikanth is in the jail in the beginning. And he's sitting in a very dark jail waiting to be released that day, and he's reading a book. That book was called My Father Balaya. It's a HarperCollins book. Ravi Subramaniam, the writer, watches the movie in New Jersey because of its first one, sends me a screen grab and says, Ananth? We looked up our backlist. It was on a print on demand. We printed 5,000 copies, put it, it's now a big bestseller. So can screen push more book sales?
There you go.
Or more
That it
famously, the book on pregnancy, came out of a scene from a huge grand movie. Anyway, one last question, please. Yeah, who? Hang on.
One quick round of applause for Vasant Nath, who is a writer, and he's adapted Sacred Games along with his fellow writers.
You?
The one who just asked
I
the
knew
question.
it. That's where this was coming from. But please, gentlemen, first row.
How do you take a book and turn it into perhaps an animated movie or series?
Excellent question. Do you want to go for it? And how do you do the matchmaking if you want to make it into an animated series? Are there enough talent in India everywhere to do that?
I think in terms of creative talent, in terms of execution and prowess with respect to animation, 100% yes. It's a space of deep interest for me as well. In terms of buyers though, we definitely do seem to have a limited pool of buyers, and unfortunately, that often tends to set market dynamics. I think it's inevitable. Animation is going to have its moment in the sun in India in the next year or two. I mean, it's already fantastic to see what the season 3 of Legend of Hanuman is doing on Hotstar, and several other animation shows that we're now starting to discover through the success of that. So you and I will have a conversation about some of your favorite books, and then I'm going to try and put that together for you. And
just to add to that, the content landscape that changed in 2018 with the coming of like web series and Sacred Games, I think that shift is yet to happen, where we begin to realize that animation is not just a cartoon to watch for kids. We have to get to that point where we realize adult animation and storytelling, it's as good as, and we're not there yet. And when we are, then we'll have more of that.
And also that intermediary, the Wes Anderson space where you don't know whether you're watching a frame or you're watching a moving film. But thank you very much. We're completely out of time. This fantastic panel will be available outside to have conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing your
Thank you
audience
so
back.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.